You think you can just disappear? The words echoed in Ava Thompson's mind as she stepped off the escalator at the bustling airport, winter wind slicing across her cheeks, white frost clinging to her coat. She tightened her grip on her son, Ethan, who clutched a small backpack, his dark eyes wide and curious, the warmth of his small hand pressing into hers. Around them, travelers hurried past, the metallic clatter of rolling luggage blending with the hum of departure announcements. Yet Ava felt as if the entire world had narrowed down to the moment before her. The glass doors of the terminal swung open and Logan Pierce emerged, tailored navy coat brushing against polished shoes, hair tousled from the winter wind. His eyes locked onto Ethan immediately, every detail, the curve of his cheek, the stubborn frown he wore when unsure, pulling him back into memories he had tried to bury. Ava's breath hitched, but she maintained a steady posture, heels clicking softly on the tile, a shield of calm against the surge of emotions rising behind her chest. Logan froze for a fraction, pupils widening as recognition struck like lightning, the air between them suddenly taut, charged with months of absence, regret, and unspoken truths. "Is he mine?" he whispered, voice rough, almost breaking from the gravity of the revelation, and Ava's lips pressed into a firm line, her gaze unwavering. "Yes." Ethan shifted in her arms, small fingers instinctively reaching for Logan's coat sleeve, testing, curious, the first tangible connection bridging the gap that years of silence had created. Logan's hands hovered, unsure whether to bridge that gap or respect the distance, the terminal noises fading into a soft hum, replaced by the rapid pulse of his own heartbeat. He knelt just slightly, careful not to overwhelm, allowing Ethan to lift his gaze and meet Logan's eyes, a flicker of recognition and wonder passing between father and son, silent but profound. Ava watched, arms steady, chest rising and falling with controlled breath, aware of the delicate balance she maintained between protecting her son and acknowledging the man who had once walked away. Flashbacks of snow-laden nights, hospital rooms, and lonely walks through empty streets flickered in her mind, each memory a testament to her resilience and the quiet dignity she had preserved. Logan's expression softened imperceptibly as he mirrored Ethan's tentative smile, emotions flickering behind the facade of composed authority he had carried for years. Passengers hurried past, oblivious, yet for Ava, Ethan, and Logan, time seemed suspended, every movement amplified. The shuffle of feet, the jangle of a dropped boarding pass, the subtle sway of Ethan's coat. A gentle exhale escaped Logan's lips, barely audible, his presence a promise, a silent acknowledgement that the moment had irrevocably altered their paths. Ava's eyes flicked to the departing planes, the cold metal gleaming against pale winter skies, and she allowed herself the briefest flicker of relief, knowing this encounter was only the beginning, a seed planted for what would unfold, unspoken yet palpably tense. The terminal alive with life around them, while their own story took center stage in the quiet intensity of a single recognition. A child's eyes affirming truths that words alone could not convey. Logan Pierce stood just a few steps from Ava Thompson and Ethan, the cold winter light reflecting off the terminal windows and casting long shadows across the polished tile floor. He shifted his weight, hesitant, as if testing whether the fragile connection he saw in Ethan's wide, trusting eyes would hold under his presence. Ava remained steady, her posture firm, the light catching the curve of her cheekbones, her dark eyes unwavering as she observed him, calculating, guarding her son while acknowledging the truth that had just unfolded. Ethan wriggled slightly in her arms, his tiny sneakers tapping against her coat, and yet he did not resist Logan's gaze, a natural recognition that seemed to bridge the years of absence. The hum of rolling luggage and distant boarding announcements faded into a background murmur as the three of them became the focus of a private, intense world. Logan's hand lifted slightly, hesitating midair, a gesture of acknowledgement, and Ethan's small fingers inched toward it, the warmth of trust forming in the smallest of movements. Memories surged in Logan's mind, the snow-dusted streets of months past, the quiet hospital room where he had chosen distance over presence, and the heavy weight of unspoken responsibility. He swallowed, forcing his breath to remain steady, but the rapid heartbeat in his chest betrayed his calm exterior. Ava's hand tightened around Ethan, and yet there was no fear in her posture, only the steady determination that had carried her through sleepless nights and lonely days. Logan took another careful step, closing a few inches of space, the scent of winter air mixing with the faint warmth of his own coat, a reminder of the ordinary world surrounding this extraordinary moment. Ethan looked up, curious, and let go of Ava's coat briefly, his small hand brushing Logan's sleeve, a tentative bond forming in that single gesture. Logan knelt slightly, enough to match the child's height, and spoke in a low, even tone, careful not to rush. "Hello, Ethan." The name hung in the air, simple yet charged, echoing with the weight of identity, acknowledgement, and new possibility. Ethan's eyes lit up, a flicker of recognition and curiosity shining through, and he leaned forward slightly, giggling with a breathless little laugh that melted some of the frozen tension. Ava's lips pressed together, a shadow of a smile touching the corner, not from relief alone, but from the pride of knowing she had navigated the past to this very moment with dignity intact. Logan reached out a finger, allowing Ethan to grasp it, the child's grip strong and sure, a quiet signal that he was ready to explore this new relationship, and Logan's heart lifted with a warmth that had been dormant, the magnitude of responsibility tempered by the intimate joy of presence. The terminal moved around them, travelers rushing past with luggage and hurried greetings, but for Ava, Ethan, and Logan, the noise became a soft, inconsequential backdrop to the profound unfolding of trust, recognition, and careful connection. A plane's engines roared in the distance, a stark reminder of the world beyond the airport's walls, and yet the moment stretched, suspended, a delicate pause in time where past regrets, current realities, and future hopes converged. Logan's eyes met Ava's, and in that brief, silent exchange, a cautious understanding passed between them. No words, just the gravity of shared history, recognition of courage, and the acknowledgement that the story was entering a new chapter. Ethan tugged gently at Logan's sleeve again, laughter breaking the tension, and Logan responded with a careful smile, soft and genuine, signaling that he would step into this role, slowly, thoughtfully, with the patience that had been absent for too long. Ava exhaled quietly, feeling the weight of past winters lift slightly, the stark cold giving way to the warmth of cautious beginnings, and together they moved slowly toward the arrival gates, the airport alive, yet strangely still around them. The future uncertain, but marked by the first small steps of reconciliation, acknowledgement, and the fragile but real formation of a bond that had waited for years to take shape. The trio moved carefully through the bustling terminal, the winter light filtering through expansive glass walls, painting long reflections on the polished floors. Ava Thompson adjusted Ethan's scarf, her fingers brushing against his small shoulders, a protective gesture that spoke of countless nights spent alone guiding him through a world that had not always been kind. Logan Pierce followed a step behind, each movement measured, conscious of the delicate balance between approaching and respecting the boundaries that Ava had set. Ethan's small fingers intermittently reached for Logan's hand, sometimes gripping lightly, sometimes retreating to his mother's warmth, testing, learning, forming his own understanding of the man who had returned to his life. Logan's breath caught when Ethan smiled, a pure, unguarded expression that mirrored his own, and he realized how much time had been lost, how much needed to be rebuilt with patience and care. Ava's gaze remained steady, scanning the movements of travelers around them, noting their distractions, their indifference, yet she remained grounded, the anchor of certainty for her son. She allowed Logan to close the space between them gradually, aware that this reunion was not just about recognition, but about establishing trust, respect, and a sense of stability that had been absent for too long. Logan's eyes softened as he observed the small, deliberate gestures Ethan made, how he adjusted the straps of his backpack, how he shifted on the tiles, how his gaze found Logan's repeatedly, as if confirming his presence, a silent dialogue that neither Ava nor Logan could fully articulate with words alone. The ambient noise of the airport, the announcements, the rolling suitcases, the chatter, faded into a gentle background, giving room for the quiet intensity of connection, the unspoken understanding between parent, child, and mother that was being formed in real time. Logan knelt slightly to meet Ethan at eye level, his tone calm and even. "Do you want to get something to eat before the flight?" Ethan's eyes lit up with recognition, a small nod, a tentative gesture of acceptance, and Logan felt a warmth he had not allowed himself to feel in years. Ava observed silently, the tension of the past months easing imperceptibly, the weight of her solitary struggles transforming into cautious hope. She allowed a small smile to touch her lips as Logan extended his hand more confidently, Ethan grasping it firmly now, their fingers entwining naturally. Each step toward the gate was deliberate, Logan mirroring Ava's pace, careful not to rush, careful to let the child guide the rhythm of this new interaction. Memories of snowy nights, quiet hospital rooms, and lonely walks through dimly lit streets hovered at the edges of Ava's mind, reminders of the resilience she had cultivated and the patience that had brought them to this point. The airport moved around them, people flowing like a river, yet the small circle of three seemed to exist in a separate current, a pocket of clarity and emerging trust. Logan's eyes met Ava's briefly, a silent acknowledgement of shared history, of mistakes recognized, and of the commitment to move forward with respect and care. Ethan's laughter bubbled softly, a light in the otherwise crisp winter air, and Logan responded with a gentle, sincere smile, a reflection of the growing bond and the understanding that the past could not be rewritten, but the present could be carefully nurtured. Ava exhaled quietly, the stress and isolation of prior winters beginning to ease, the cold giving way to the warmth of potential connection and cautious optimism. Together, they approached the boarding area, the moment stretched with significance, each step marking the beginning of a journey not just through the airport, but through the rebuilding of a family, the acknowledgement of a son's place in his father's life, and the careful weaving of trust, respect, and hope into a tapestry that had waited years to begin forming. They reached the boarding gate, the bright winter sunlight streaming through the massive windows, casting sharp reflections on the polished floors and the endless line of travelers bustling around them. Ava Thompson guided Ethan with a calm authority, his small hand tucked securely in hers, and every step forward seemed to mark a silent negotiation between past wounds and the fragile trust slowly forming. Logan Pierce followed, keeping a respectful distance, his gaze never leaving Ethan, observing every blink, every subtle gesture, as if trying to memorize the rhythm of his son's presence, each detail grounding him in the reality of a family that had once been absent. The subtle scent of coffee and the metallic hum of luggage wheels rolled past them, but for this small trio, the outside world became an inconsequential blur, the focus entirely on the growing connection between father and son. Ethan looked up at Logan for reassurance and recognition, his tiny face full of curiosity and cautious trust, and Logan knelt slightly to meet his gaze, the stiffness of years melting slowly with each shared glance, a quiet exchange that carried more weight than words could ever convey. Ava's eyes tracked the interactions, alert yet relaxed, giving space while also silently directing the flow of trust, the subtle nods, and controlled movements ensuring that her son's comfort came first. Logan extended a hand slowly, allowing Ethan to reach out and grasp it, the boy's fingers curling naturally around the larger hand, a bridge forming without force, a connection that neither rushed nor overstated. They moved toward the boarding counter, the moment stretched, every step deliberate, measured, echoing with the significance of acknowledgement, of presence, of the careful reweaving of a family bond that had been missing for far too long. Logan's voice was low but steady, careful to avoid startling Ethan, offering gentle affirmations and quiet questions that invited participation rather than command, a new pattern of interaction building slowly with each gesture and response. Ava allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile to brush her lips as she observed this careful dance, the subtle recognition that Logan was learning to navigate a role that had been absent, the responsibility and patience required unfolding in real time before her eyes. Ethan's laughter occasionally bubbled up, light and spontaneous, each sound a softening of the tension that had been present, and Logan responded with mirrored smiles and gentle nods, acknowledging the child's agency, the steps of trust earned and given freely. The terminal moved around them, a stream of travelers with luggage, announcements, and hurried conversations creating a soft, distant murmur, while this small family moved in a bubble of careful presence. Every glance, every slight touch, every shared smile carrying layers of meaning that words alone could never fully capture. Logan's eyes met Ava's once again, a brief but weighty exchange, conveying understanding, acknowledgement, and a shared commitment to navigate this new chapter with patience and respect. Ethan tugged lightly at both their hands, giggling softly, and the warmth of that simple action seemed to settle the air around them. A quiet affirmation that trust was forming, connection was being established, and the journey they were on together was only beginning. The winter sunlight shifted across the terminal, gleaming off luggage, windows, and the polished tile, illuminating the careful steps of a father, mother, and son discovering each other again. A story of recognition, patience, and the quiet power of presence unfolding with every deliberate movement, every shared glance, every soft laugh that echoed between them, signaling the start of a bond that had waited years to take shape and was now beginning to grow in the space of shared moments and attentive care. The line to the gates slowly shortened, the winter sunlight shifting across the windows, glinting off metal and glass, illuminating the careful steps of Ava Thompson, Ethan, and Logan Pierce. Ava kept a steady hand on Ethan's back, guiding him with an unspoken authority, her posture calm yet commanding, signaling that this was a space where he felt safe, and every choice mattered. Ethan's small sneakers scuffed softly against the polished tile as he glanced between his mother and Logan, curiosity bright in his eyes, testing the new dynamic unfolding around him. Logan maintained a measured distance, each movement deliberate, careful not to overwhelm, yet his gaze never wavered from Ethan, noting each subtle gesture, the tilt of his head, the twitch of a smile, the slight curl of a hand, as evidence of the boy's trust beginning to form. The hum of travelers and distant announcements formed a muted soundtrack, fading into the background as the microcosm of three held center stage, a delicate balance of past regrets and tentative connections. Logan crouched slightly, speaking in a soft, steady voice that carried over the subtle noise of the terminal, inviting conversation and engagement without imposing, allowing Ethan to respond on his own terms. Ava's eyes never left them, alert and attentive, her calm presence reinforcing the safety that allowed trust to emerge, her slight nods and patient pauses a guidepost for the new interaction. Ethan reached for Logan's hand once more, and this time, the movement carried no hesitation, the grip firm and confident, a small but significant bridge forming between father and son. Logan's chest lifted with a quiet, private relief, a warmth that had been absent for years filling the space around him. The recognition that presence and patience could slowly undo the weight of absence. Ava allowed herself a soft exhale, feeling the tension of past months dissipate slightly, the protective wall she had maintained now shared with a man proving he could honor her boundaries and her son's well-being. As they approached the counter, Logan's voice continued to guide gently, asking questions that invited participation, noting Ethan's responses, smiling at small affirmations, encouraging confidence without overt direction. Ava mirrored these cues, a delicate orchestration of subtle signals that allowed both men to engage while reinforcing the security of the child. Passengers moved around them in a blur, the terminal a sea of hurried feet and rolling luggage. Yet within this small circle, time seemed to slow, each glance, each gesture carrying immense significance. Logan's eyes found Ava's across the space, a quiet, unspoken dialogue passing between them. Acknowledgement of past missteps, commitment to patience, and a shared understanding that the journey ahead required care and attentiveness. Ethan laughed softly, a sound bright and innocent, and Logan mirrored the smile instinctively, the simplest act resonating with a sense of belonging and cautious optimism. Ava's lips curved in a quiet, fleeting smile, a reflection of relief and pride in the careful balance being struck, and together they moved toward the gate, steps measured, each one marking the continuation of a story that had begun in absence and was slowly taking shape through careful presence, trust, and the fragile but growing bonds of family. The winter sunlight following their progress, highlighting the quiet determination, the tentative joy, and the patient unfolding of recognition and connection that would guide them into the next chapter of their shared journey. The boarding area began to quiet slightly as passengers settled into lines and gathered their belongings. Yet Ava Thompson, Ethan, and Logan Pierce moved through the space as if time itself had slowed to accommodate them. Ava's hand rested lightly on Ethan's back, her fingers brushing against the warmth of his small coat, guiding him with a steady, controlled presence, and every step seemed measured to maintain the delicate balance between caution and trust. Logan followed closely, matching their pace, his eyes scanning each movement, each subtle expression on Ethan's face, trying to understand the boy's rhythms, his pauses, the way he tilted his head, the way his small hands explored the edges of his backpack, each microgesture a sign of growing confidence and tentative acceptance. The distant hum of the airport, the announcement chimes, the wheels of rolling luggage, the soft murmur of conversation, faded into a muted backdrop, leaving only the quiet intensity of the trio as they moved together through the terminal. Logan crouched slightly at Ethan's side, speaking in calm, deliberate tones, his voice carrying a warmth he had rarely allowed himself before, each word carefully chosen to invite participation without imposing. And Ethan responded with small nods and soft smiles, tentative affirmations that slowly formed the beginnings of a relationship. Ava observed silently, a slight smile brushing her lips, the satisfaction of seeing the careful dance unfold between father and son, the small gestures of trust being built with deliberate patience. Ethan reached out once more, his fingers curling around Logan's, and the grip this time was confident and sure, a sign that the boy was beginning to embrace this new dynamic, that recognition had transformed into connection. Logan's chest rose and fell with a quiet, private relief, the warmth spreading through him, the awareness that trust, patience, and steady presence could mend years of absence and establish a foundation that had been missing. Ava exhaled slowly, the subtle weight she had carried for so long beginning to ease, her careful guidance allowing Logan to step closer while maintaining her own sense of agency and ensuring her son's comfort remained the priority. The trio moved forward toward the counter, each step deliberate, echoing with significance, the small interactions between father and son creating a rhythm of trust, engagement, and mutual recognition. Logan's eyes frequently met Ava's, brief glances conveying acknowledgement of shared history, the recognition of past mistakes, and the silent agreement that careful attention and respect would guide their next interactions. Ethan laughed softly at something Logan said, a gentle, spontaneous sound that broke the tension, and Logan mirrored the smile instinctively, reinforcing the nascent bond forming in that moment. Ava's smile deepened slightly, her heart lightened by the sight of Logan engaging attentively, the subtle gestures of connection unfolding naturally, unhurried, and in harmony with her guidance. The airport moved around them in waves of motion, travelers passing with purpose, but within their small circle, time seemed to stretch and slow, allowing moments of recognition, trust, and quiet joy to imprint themselves fully. Each small step, each shared glance, each gentle touch between Logan and Ethan carried immense meaning, a careful choreography of acknowledgement and acceptance, while Ava's steady presence ensured that the steps were measured, safe, and nurturing. Logan's voice remained calm, offering gentle comments and questions, creating space for Ethan's responses, encouraging curiosity, confidence, and interaction without imposing authority. Ava allowed herself to relax slightly, the months of isolation and vigilance softening under the warmth of this careful engagement, the sense of hope and cautious optimism growing stronger with each deliberate interaction. Together, they approached the boarding area, the winter sunlight streaming across the terminal, highlighting their steps, their glances, their shared laughter, the beginning of a chapter where recognition, trust, and connection would guide the family toward a future shaped by patience, understanding, and the quiet strength of presence. The boarding gates slowly became less crowded, travelers moving toward their flights with purposeful steps. Yet Ava Thompson, Ethan, and Logan Pierce occupied a small, private space within the busy terminal where the winter sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the trio in warm, shifting patterns across the polished floor. Ava held Ethan's small hand firmly yet gently, guiding him with the steady assurance that had carried them through past winters alone, and each step was deliberate, creating a rhythm of safety and trust that allowed Ethan to explore this renewed relationship with his father without fear. Logan followed closely, careful not to crowd, his gaze attentive to every micro-expression, every flicker of curiosity or hesitation on Ethan's face, learning how to be present and patient, aware that trust could only grow at the child's pace. The distant murmur of announcements and rolling luggage faded into a gentle background hum, allowing the quiet intimacy of recognition, acceptance, and tentative bonding to dominate the space. Logan crouched slightly, speaking softly, asking questions that invited engagement without imposing authority, and Ethan responded with shy nods, tiny smiles, and the occasional tug of his father's sleeve, gestures that signaled growing confidence and cautious openness. Ava watched with a calm intensity, noting each small interaction, her slight nods and subtle shifts in posture guiding the unfolding dynamics between father and son, ensuring that the boundary she had long enforced remained intact while still permitting Logan to step closer, slowly, carefully, with respect. Each touch, glance, and movement carried layered significance. The brushing of fingers, the fleeting eye contact, the way Ethan's small shoulders pressed against Logan's arm for a moment of reassurance. And Logan absorbed each detail, committing them to memory as he embraced the responsibilities he had once walked away from. A faint chuckle from Ethan broke the tension, a delicate sound that filled the air with warmth, and Logan mirrored it with a gentle smile, feeling the first real connection forming in months, a bond constructed from patience, presence, and shared moments of trust. The terminal around them continued its relentless flow, passengers moving in waves, announcements echoing intermittently, the metallic clatter of luggage rolling across the tile. Yet within this small circle, time seemed suspended, each careful step forward representing progress, each small laugh or nod a victory over the long absence that had preceded this encounter. Logan's eyes found Ava's, a brief meeting of gazes carrying acknowledgement, apology, understanding, and the quiet agreement to navigate this next chapter with care and consideration. Ava allowed herself the tiniest of smiles, the tension of past isolation easing slightly as she observed Logan engaging attentively, the subtle signs of a father learning to be present, aware, and patient, the trust in his actions slowly translating into reassurance for Ethan. The winter sunlight glinted off the reflective surfaces of the terminal, casting moving patterns over their feet and the polished floor, a visual echo of the subtle, shifting rhythms of the relationship unfolding between them. Each laugh, glance, and deliberate step built a foundation, tentative yet solid, for the family bond that had long been absent. And as they approached the final boarding area, the sense of quiet hope and cautious optimism stretched before them, a promise that presence, recognition, and patience could begin to transform absence into connection, and mistrust into the first threads of a relationship that would continue to grow as they navigated the journey ahead together, hand in hand, step by careful step. The boarding announcement echoed softly through the terminal, blending with the distant chatter and the metallic clatter of rolling suitcases. Yet for Ava Thompson, Ethan, and Logan Pierce, the sound seemed distant, almost irrelevant, as if the world had shrunk to the small space they occupied together. Ava's hand rested lightly on Ethan's back, a guiding presence that allowed him to feel secure, while Logan moved with careful attentiveness, his eyes capturing every subtle expression, every tentative gesture, every flicker of curiosity or joy that passed across his son's face. Ethan's small fingers occasionally reached for Logan's hand, each touch a delicate affirmation, a silent conversation of trust and recognition that needed no words. Logan bent slightly, adjusting to Ethan's height, offering gentle questions and soft reassurances, his voice low and even, creating a rhythm of presence and attentiveness that allowed Ethan to respond freely, to explore the boundaries of this new connection. Ava's gaze remained steady, observing the interactions, noting each micro-movement, the tilt of the head, the slight curl of a hand, the way Ethan's eyes lit when Logan spoke or smiled. a subtle choreography of trust forming under her careful watch. The terminal lights reflected off polished floors and glass surfaces, casting shifting patterns across the family, a visual echo of the quiet, unfolding bonds between them. Logan's chest rose and fell with a controlled rhythm, the warmth of pride and connection mingling with the careful restraint required to honor the space Ava maintained, the delicate balance between presence and overreach, patience and engagement. Ethan laughed softly at a gentle joke from Logan, the sound bright and pure, and Logan mirrored it with a smile. The simplest interaction carrying weight and meaning, a step in the slow building of familiarity, acknowledgement, and tentative love. Ava allowed herself a subtle smile, the weight of years of vigilance and protection easing slightly as she observed the delicate dance of interaction, the careful steps Logan took to earn trust and respect. Passengers passed by, rushing toward gates and conversations, oblivious to the small world of quiet recognition and emerging connection within which the three moved together, their footsteps synchronized in a rhythm of patience, observation, and cautious engagement. Logan's eyes found Ava's briefly, a silent conversation passing between them, an acknowledgement of past absence, the recognition of mistakes, and the mutual commitment to proceed with care, understanding, and respect. Ethan tugged lightly at Logan's sleeve again, giggling, a small spark of joy and trust forming in that simple motion, and Logan responded with a reassuring smile, bending slightly to meet the child's gaze, the warmth of presence, attention, and patience shining through. Ava exhaled slowly, the months of isolation and solitary vigilance softening, the careful steps of trust, recognition, and patient guidance beginning to build a fragile but promising bridge between father and son. Each glance, each touch, each shared smile carried immense meaning, a careful choreography of acknowledgement, reassurance, and gentle connection, while Ava's watchful presence ensured that every step was measured, intentional, and nurturing. The winter light shifted through the terminal windows, casting long reflections and highlighting the deliberate pace of their movement, the cautious yet significant gestures that marked the first stages of a bond. Waiting years to emerge, now unfolding through presence, attention, and the quiet power of patient connection. The boarding process continued steadily, the winter sunlight streaming through the expansive windows casting long, moving reflections across the terminal floor, highlighting Ava Thompson, Ethan, and Logan Pierce as they approached the gate. Ava's hand remained lightly on Ethan's back, a steadying presence that allowed him to feel secure while exploring this new relationship with Logan, who moved deliberately alongside them, adjusting his pace to match theirs and observing every subtle motion, every flicker of emotion on Ethan's face. The child's small fingers intermittently reached for Logan's hand, and each touch was a careful negotiation of trust and recognition, a silent conversation that required patience, attentiveness, and care. Logan crouched slightly to align with Ethan's height, his voice calm, and even as he spoke gently, offering affirmations and quiet encouragements that invited the boy to respond freely, to test boundaries, and to form his own understanding of the connection unfolding. Ava's gaze was steady, attentive, and protective, noting each gesture, each glance, each slight shift in posture, guiding the interactions without intrusion and allowing Logan to earn trust with deliberate patience. The ambient sounds of the terminal, the distant announcements, the rolling luggage, the soft chatter of travelers, faded into a muted backdrop, leaving space for the quiet intensity of recognition, bonding, and emotional presence to dominate their small sphere. Logan's chest rose and fell with a controlled rhythm, warmth spreading slowly through him as he realized that the patient, deliberate steps he was taking were bridging a gap left by years of absence, and that trust, carefully cultivated, could form a stable foundation for this emerging family dynamic. Ethan's laughter rang softly, a clear, bright sound that filled the space with light, and Logan mirrored the smile instinctively, the simple interaction carrying deep significance, a first tangible connection. Ava allowed a subtle smile, the tension of past winters easing slightly, her relief, tempered by the knowledge that the process of trust and reconciliation was delicate and ongoing. Each step toward the gate carried layered meaning, each gesture of touch or glance building upon the last, a choreography of presence, reassurance, and growing bond. Logan's eyes met Ava's briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, a shared understanding that patience, respect, and attention were essential to navigating this new chapter together. Ethan tugged lightly at Logan's sleeve again, a small, spontaneous giggle emerging, and Logan responded with gentle warmth, bending slightly to meet the child's gaze, reinforcing connection, confidence, and trust. The trio moved forward, steps measured, eyes alert to each other, yet moving in unison as the boarding area hummed around them, travelers passing in waves, announcements and luggage wheels creating a soft, consistent rhythm, irrelevant to the quiet drama unfolding. Winter light shifted across the terminal, illuminating the trio with a subtle brilliance, reflections dancing across polished floors, glass, and metal, echoing the subtle, fragile bonds forming between father, mother, and son. Each glance, each touch, each small gesture carried immense weight, signaling acknowledgement, recognition, and the careful cultivation of trust that had waited years to emerge. The moment stretched, a quiet pause in time where presence, patience, and deliberate attention shaped the unfolding relationship, a bridge from absence to connection, from hesitation to warmth, and from past distance to a hopeful, cautious beginning that promised continuity, trust, and a slowly strengthening bond as they approached the boarding gate, ready to step together into the next chapter of their shared journey.